far too long, the stories that have been told about women in the continent and women in business, women in politics and in culture on the African continent and across the global south have been authored by traditional gatekeepers. Now, this next panel will assemble 5 amazing women who have seized their narratives and turned them into strategic assets from capital, policy, culture, corporate power, and advocacy. And coming back to lead this conversation will be Stephanie Busari, who travels all the way from the western region of the continent, Nigeria. Let's meet the panelists.
Voices, strategy, and the power of the female narrative. The panelists are Dr. Kemi Da Silva Ibru, consultant OBGYN, a public health physician and founder WARIF. Nkiru Achikuhu, founder and creative director Zifans & Co. Sophia Momodu, entrepreneur, a fashion consultant and founder Precious Jewels Foundation. Udo Okonjo, CEO and Executive Vice Chairman, Fine and Country, West Africa. The moderator is Stephanie Busari, founder and CEO, SBB Media, and founder and publisher, Her Story.
Well, good evening, Joburg. I'm so thrilled. We're the last panel. I'm so thrilled to see so many of you still here. It's wonderful to be here, all the way from Lagos, Nigeria. Woo! So we're thrilled to be here. We're part of the Her Story Leadership Exchange. My name is Stephanie Busari, as you've heard. I was a journalist for 16 years with CNN International, based out in Lagos and in London. And when I left CNN, I set up my own media agency, really geared towards telling African stories in different ways. It's time for us to own our narratives, to shape our stories. And part of why these women are here is to really own the power of our voice and shape our narrative. And as you heard, I'm the publisher of the book Her Story, and some of the women here are in this book, and they're here to share their stories boldly and loudly. So let's give them another huge round of applause. So I know you've heard a lot of bios today, and it's the last panel, so we're going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to ask the women to tell us one thing that they would like the audience to remember about them when they leave today. So, Dr. Kemi, take it away.
Well, good evening, Joburg. My name is Dr. Kemi Da Silva Ibru. I'm a practicing obstetrician and gynecologist, been doing that for 25 years. I'm also a gender advocate and the founder of the Women at Risk International Foundation, WARIF, which is a leading non-profit organization in West Africa addressing rape, sexual violence, and sex trafficking of young girls and women. And it's such a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you.
Nkiru?
My name is Nkiru Achukwu, and I'm the founder and creative director of Zefans & Co. Zefans & Co. is Nigeria's leading female ready-to-wear brand, and I'd love to be remembered as a woman who not only created a brand, but also a woman who created a pathway for other creatives to rise, thrive, and create.
And can I just add that Nkiru's brand is presently in 52 countries in the world, soon to be in South Africa. Isn't that right? Sophia.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sophia Momodu. I am a fashion consultant, a lifestyle influencer, and I also run a foundation called Precious Jewels Foundation for pregnant women, vulnerable children, and widows. The message I would like to pass across today would be to remind women to always stand up for themselves, regardless of the magnitude of your opposition.
Fantastic, thank you. And last, but certainly not the least, Udo Okonjo.
Hello, South Africa. I'm excited to be here. Johannesburg is not just a stop for me. Johannesburg is where I found my voice. Johannesburg is where I got my healing 19 years ago. Johannesburg is where I signed the Fine and Country West Africa license while I was going through chemotherapy and radiotherapy right here in Sandton 19 years ago. Wow. Johannesburg, South Africa is also where my children have incredible memories because they went to school here in Johannesburg many years ago. So I sit here and it's full circle for me, and I'm really delighted to find myself here. Finally, this very town is where I found my sense of purpose and built the Inspired Women of Worth, which was launched in Johannesburg in October 2010. So being here on this stage is a real privilege. Thank you very much.
And can I tell you a fun fact? Udo's voice is so powerful that a member of the audience here saw that she was speaking at Forbes Leading Women and immediately booked a ticket just to come here to hear Udo speak. Yes. So I think that deserves a round of applause. She came all the way from Kenya. Yes. Wave if you're here, but I really find that very remarkable. So now oh, there she is. Yes. Hello, thank you for coming. Wonderful, wonderful. So let's get into it. Dr. Kemi, the work that you do is so valuable, and you have worked at the front line of gender-based violence across medicine, public health, and policy. What did that clinical experience reveal that eventually made building an institution like WARIF necessary?
So like I just said, my day job is a gynecologist. And for 25 years, I have served women. Young women that are pregnant and about to have beautiful babies, or elder women having personal summers, as many of us are experiencing lately, and other women, sadly, that have ominous diagnosis like cancer. And I spend my days listening and caring for women. My job, sadly, brings me to intersections where I'm exposed to other women that are forced into silence, but their narratives are one of horror, daily enduring acts of violence, without a safe space, without a voice. When I started working in this space as a healthcare practitioner, my focus was always clinical care. I was very, very adamant about making sure that we have standard practices in mainstream healthcare in a low-middle-income country like Nigeria, because we always have challenges with our healthcare system. And so I moved back to Nigeria with that intention. Little did I know that the women that would be my passion, the women that I would spend majority of my days worried about, would be these women that would walk into my office space, ashamed, forced into silence, telling me these horrific stories. And I very quickly recognized that my clinical practice was not enough to offer care for them. They needed more. They needed dignity. They needed justice. They needed a voice. And they needed me to stand in the gap. And so this is what I was then called upon to do. So establishing a nonprofit organization was more than a moral imperative. It was a calling. I very quickly saw that, unfortunately, essential services were not available to many of these women. And I very quickly realized that if I was going to impact a change, I had to be that change. And I had to bring into their spaces a specialized care that included not just health services, but everything else that came with.
Fantastic. So, Nkiru, let me come to you. Building Zephans, 10 years ago now, right? Yes. From Lagos into a brand, shipping to over 52 countries. That's not a small feat. We know all the infrastructure problems that you face and all the operational issues. What exactly has that journey cost you, and what made it possible?
I believe that, thank you for that question, because that's not something that I get asked often. I believe that, yes, first of all, capital is very capital intensive, even though I started really small, but the real cost wasn't just capital. It was my time, it was, delayed gratification, because every time, every sale at the beginning, every money that was made had to go back into the business. So as much as it looked like you were doing very well, the numbers were great, but I wasn't able to do anything for myself. Everything had to keep going back. I had to make decisions without precedence because there was nobody holding my hand. A lot of decisions that I had to make were just blind decisions because you just didn't know how it was going to turn out, if it was going to be good. And for the times when it went bad, I was just expected to pick myself back up, and then try again. So it cost me my time, it cost me relationships, it cost me a lot of sleep. But at the end of the day, what has made it possible for us to still be here and going strong? And just like you said, we're present in about 52 countries now, sold over 350,000 units. What has made that possible is really consistency and choosing to show up, choosing to just be consistent, no matter how big it is today. Someone has posted you, it looks like, oh my God, you guys have gone viral. And then there's no rest time, there's no downtime. We just have to keep on moving. And yeah, that's how we've gotten here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm wearing Zephans & Co. And many women have come to me to ask, where is this from? And so this is the creator of this beautiful suit that I'm wearing. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your passion. Now, Sophia, let me come to you. You've built a personal brand in full public view under real scrutiny. How do you decide what to share, what to protect, and how to keep ownership of your own story?
Thank you very much. So I always say that you cannot control how you're perceived, but you definitely can control what you stand for. So I'd say it still boils down to my core values at the end of the day and who I really am. So when I find myself having to put my brand first or in front of me when I'm working, I realize that you can't listen to the scrutiny. It cannot be something that affects you in any way. You have to focus on who you are, your core values, what you stand for, and what you're trying to achieve. There's a saying where I come from that says, "Don't forget who you are, where you're coming from. Where you're coming from, where you're going, and it's most importantly, who you are as a person." And so when I find myself in that position where there's a lot of scrutiny and all of that, I remember who I am, where I'm coming from, and where I'm going. And I find that can always help me focus on the goal at hand, and it ends up being white noise. But also, I agree with what Nkiru said: consistency, and just staying focused. And also, I've been able to be blessed with the likes of Dr. Kemi, who has been amazing in this story that is my journey in life. She's been able to be that resounding voice in my life, and also has steered me in the right direction towards women who have stood up for me and said, listen, if I could do it, so can you. Just stay focused and do what you need to do. And I find that it's been a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone needs a Dr. Kemi in their lives, a real advocate and fighter for women. And to come to you, Udo, I know you've built a solid career in real estate, but now you're kind of transitioning to leadership and strategy for women, and in particular, helping women to build wealth. Tell us about that journey and what that looks like.
Right, thank you, Stephanie. When I transited from law, which I'd done for almost 20 years at the time, into real estate as an entrepreneur, I came from a profession that, you essentially didn't market, you didn't lead in the front, you just did the work, as it were. So coming into business, into entrepreneurship, I had to put on a different hat and a different set of lens. And these lenses were the lens of a builder, especially when you're building on the African continent. We're setting new standards in all the industries, whether it's real estate, it's education, it's health, it's pharmacy, whatever it is. I recognized that we needed to build as it were, beyond the business. We needed to build the industry, and we were also nation builders, as it were, that the people who work for us are people that we're also building to contribute to the nation. Now, I've done that for the last 19 years or so, 17 years actually. And while doing that, I recognize that it's not enough to focus on the company, but actually, business is a platform for good. And so it was while building Fine and Country West Africa that we launched the Women's Network at the time. At the time we signed the license, 2 years later, we launched the Inspired Women of Worth Network, which at that time was really helping women to build confidence, gain a sense of purpose, and to understand that we could be much more than wives, mothers. We could be all those things and more in society, right? Leadership was a very big thing. But in the last few years, I started sensing that we've had a lot of conversations around women getting to the table, women getting to the top, that we now needed to move and begin to have conversations around building wealth, around building our own tables, around, as it were, commanding wealth. And so that led me, along with a few other women, to then launch the Radiant Collective Capital. The singular idea about that is that wealth has been essentially quite masculine, and our focus is to feminize wealth, is to make it so comfortable for women that we are interested in building wealth, and we don't shy away from it because it makes us look overly ambitious, intimidated, and all of that. Wealth is a beautiful thing, and we want more women to feel comfortable about it. And how do we do that? We do that by creating the space where we demystify the idea of big opportunities. So, for example, we were in South Africa last year, and I understood that the Michelangelo Towers, is no longer, the Michelangelo Hotel is no longer in existence after the pandemic. Don't know the full story, but I just imagine if 100 women in this room were to come together and we were to fund, the purchase of that and bring in technical managers and actually take that as an opportunity. And it's not far-fetched. We've just made our first investment into a luxury boutique hotel in Marrakesh. It's a Pan-African collective. We have members in South Africa, Kenya, Angola, Mozambique, all across Africa, and also the diaspora. And the single idea is that we take small checks and we participate in big opportunities. The other thing is also the network, the community. So if I come into South Africa, I have sisters who I'm not just doing sisterhood with, but I'm also doing business with. I think that is so powerful for women to move from the place of talking about the table to actually creating our own tables, participating in building the pies and not just taking part of other people's pies. And then the final one is, of course, education. Thank you. The final one is education. For us, we are very, very singularly focused on, as it were, empowering, educating more women with the knowledge. And so we bring together the collective wisdom of the women in the room. These are senior business women, leaders across all spheres, across all geographic regions in Africa. And we also engage experts. Only yesterday, we had the Global Equities Room in the collective. It's virtual, it's a virtual membership, and we're having conversations about investing in stocks in Johannesburg, in Kenya, in Nigeria, all over Africa. So that's the work that I've been doing. I believe that it is women, African women, who will fund the future of Africa.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Yes, absolutely.
So talking about money and empowerment, I know, Dr. Kemi, that you have really put your heart and soul and your money into WARIF, the platform that you founded to help counter gender-based violence. Tell us about the process it's taken you to really get this going, and how do you go from these harrowing individual stories that you hear on a daily basis to translating into systems policy role in what you do?
I think it's important to start with the why. When you talk about disenfranchised women, when you talk about women that have endured acts of violence, We don't appreciate the scale. In South Africa, I believe at least 35% of women will have at least one violent encounter in their lifetime. I know back in Nigeria, it's 30% of our women. So these are women with lived experiences. These are women that come to the table appreciating what their needs are. So it's so important to actively listen and to respect that, because there would be the patterns that you can use to understand what works and what won't work. And that's what framed our basic, unique approach in establishing my organization, understanding the needs of these women. I'm a gynecologist whose day job is to care for these women. Sadly, the youngest I've had to operate on is only 9 months of age, and the oldest is in her 70s. I have seen women from all walks of life walk into my facility in need of assistance. And therefore, it's important to start there, offering them the services and meeting them at that point of need. And this is how this unique implementation has become so successful and how we've been able to work with other organizations across West Africa. But even beyond the care that you're offering women, you need to look at this issue through the lens of prevention. How do we stop the issue from happening to begin with? How do we go back to those patriarchal social norms that we all find ourselves dealing with in our daily lives? Women that don't have agency over themselves, women that are forced to acquiesce to their spouses because that's what tradition dictates. How do we stop and catch our breath and change that narrative? It has to start with implementing programs to the individuals that have the power. We need to speak to our boys. We need to change their narrative from being potential perpetrators to protectors. We need to speak to our men. We need men as allies. We need men as allies, yes, because this is not a woman problem. This is a human issue that affects us all. And then finally, we need data. There's a dearth of data on the continent, and we recognize that. And data is gold. A lived experience, the survivor stories of women is that data, and we need to curate it. And more importantly, we need to stand in the gap and change her narrative.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. So Nkiru, in your journey as a fashion designer, did you feel that there's a tension that I sense that many African designers have between maintaining cultural authenticity and meeting the expectations of global markets? And do you feel that, and how do you navigate it if you do?
I don't see it as tension. I see it as responsibility. As African creative founders, I think that it's our responsibility to ensure that we're not diluting our culture to be accepted. It's our responsibility to present our brands or our designs in a way that it is so excellent that it's almost impossible not to want it. So I absolutely do not, I think that it's important that we continue to maintain our identity. I don't even think that African designers or African creativity was made to be diluted or was made to be, to fit in. We are our own people, our voices are loud, so I believe that the most important thing that we have to do is to present it so excellently that it will be almost impossible to miss or to say no to. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic. So, Sophia, your foundation, Precious Jewels, works with vulnerable women and children. So how do you use your visibility and influence as tools for that work other than just assets for your brand?
I find that because of my personal story, a lot of women have been able to, they find me relatable. It's not difficult to reach out to me and speak to me. And so when they do, I make them as comfortable as possible. The goal is to help the African woman, or just the woman in general, be comfortable in her own skin. We are constantly being told how to be, how to look, how to sound, and I make that avenue for come as you are. For me, it's very important. Come as you are, speak to me in your language, tell me your story. I want to hear what you're going through. And then after that, I always say to them, so now you've told me your story. We're on the same page. I feel what you're feeling. What would you like to happen next? How do you want to move forward? I want to hear from you first before I then tell you what I think, should be the way forward. I find that it has made it very easy for me to be able to do things without having to feel like I have to brainstorm all the time or create how certain things have to be. So listening to the women, seeing the children, visiting them in their schools, and not just visiting them in their schools, we follow up with their academic work as well. We if we find that a child is not following up, is not doing well with the academics, we find out what's happening, and it's usually some stuff that's happening at home. And we find that we sometimes have to intervene as well and just pour in a little bit of more love and, help out as much as we can. So without saying much, I would say I allow the women to come as they are and be who you are. You don't have to be a certain way. You don't have to have a certain amount of money in your account. Just come as you are, share your story, and let's see how we can help you.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. So we're running out of time, and I'll just do one last quick fire question for each of the panelists. I'll start with you, Udo. You've managed to turn your narrative into influence in your field. Looking 10 years ahead, how do you see women's leadership across Africa reshaping business, culture, and how the continent is perceived globally?
I feel like we're in a super opportune moment where women have the power to create the future that we desire. I feel like it's important for us to stop trying to fit into the boxes that have been built and to literally take the pen in our hands to write the future that we want to see. And it comes with understanding the power of your story. It comes with understanding the power of our uniqueness as Africans and then also as women. We're not trying to be men. We're not trying to be Caucasian, American, or Europeans. We are proudly Africans.
Absolutely.
And the minute we embrace that narrative and bring it to the table and use it to design the future, we're going to see a really powerful future for ourselves, our countries, and our continents.
Absolutely. Dr. Kemi, I'll come to you with the same question.
So I'll piggyback on what Udo was saying about being that strong African woman. We will continue to be strong African women. We already are.
Yeah.
We will continue to build institutions. We will lead with inclusion.
Yes.
We will be kind. We will be empathetic. And most important of all, we will mentor, because we will create pathways for those coming behind us. And the bigger we get in our spaces, the more young women we carry along with us, we will see that Africa that Udo says, where the African woman is leading the charge. And Africa will continue to fund Africa, and Africa will indeed be that giant that we know she is. Thank you very much.
And Kiru?
I mean, I feel like they've said everything. But I mean, I would just say, yes, they said everything, but I would just say that, the Africa that we hope for as women is possible. And I love that events like this happen because it just reinforces that we're all experiencing the same things, especially women in leadership. We all know what we want the next generation to benefit. We don't want them to go through the same struggles that we have gone through. And then everyone here, and even you who in the audience, you're creating space for the women after us to see that the Africa that they hope for, or the Africa that we hope for women, is possible. And if just by sharing our stories, a young girl somewhere a young African girl is able to say that because of them, I'm going to pursue my dream, I feel like we would have all been fulfilled, or would all be fulfilled. Yeah, thank you so much.
Sophia, very briefly, last word.
I feel like they've said it all.
Okay.
I feel like, also from contributing to what Nkiru just said, we really want things to be better for our daughters. Yeah. We don't want our daughters to have to deal with what most women today, or even our mothers and our mothers' mothers have had to deal with. We want a society that is not only allows women to thrive, but to also be themselves and be as feminine as possible.
Yeah.
So we're all working towards a greater future for our children, I believe.
Absolutely, and that seems like a great place to leave it. We are all working towards a better future for our children, men and women. It remains to thank this wonderful panel. And we have come from Lagos, Nigeria, as part of a 20-women delegation because we believe in the power of collaboration. We believe that we should not work in silos. We want to connect with our South African sisters and brothers. We want to partner and to make money together, do business together. And so thank you, Forbes, Leading Women Africa, Leading Women Summit, for making this possible.